Allen, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Jacob.
Of course. No, I was really looking forward to having a full conversation with you once I actually took a dive, saw some of the stuff that you're doing, some of the other podcasts that you have, and the conversations you like to have. And I know a lot of the times it bounces around to the different technologies people are using, what some of the changes in the space are. And more than anything, I know you have a lot of experience in the space. I kind of want to pick your brain on some of the specifics and just see where you think things are going in the industry.
Okay, cool. Sounds good.
So I was taking a look at one of the more recent things you did. I know you did a panel over at SCAA, and one of the things I wanted to really ask about. So in my last conversation, I talked a lot about AI, but it was more from like a chat GPT sense. Like how can you communicate with AI to get answers? How can you use it to improve efficiencies, things like that. How do you see AI like in your industry? What's your view of AI and what's more of the use case with what it is you do?
I mean, we see in the payments industry a lot of different companies using AI, and some of it is really, really cool. So, one company we work with, they decided, they have like a frequently asked questions on their website. And in the help section for the restaurants and bars that use this particular point of sale software. So they put an AI in there. So now instead of the manager or the employee scrolling through all these frequently asked questions to find what they need, because it was somewhat searchable, but then it didn't really dig down. You could actually punch in, how do you add an employee to the system? How do I update the prices on my menu? How do I do this? And boom, the answer comes up with a full detailed explanation of what to do. I think that's really cool. Another thing I've seen with AI is I saw somebody's system and so let's say you had a convenience store, you can go into their system. Once you can load in all your inventory items, they have over 200,000 items in their database. So you could just go into their database and go, yeah, I use this, and this. It'll put not only add it to your system, but now it'll go out and search all the people in your zip code, or let's say 5-10 mile radius, and it will compare whatever price you're selling it for to what they're selling it for. So you can be competitively priced. And I've seen, two or three different companies doing that with their point of sale. Or, I saw another company that had their own AI, and it could take like all your reports that your financial reports, and then turn them into charts, turn them into graphs, answer questions like, oh, we have happy hour at our restaurant. Tell us about all the other restaurants within 5 mile radius who have a happy hour. What's on the menu? What are their drink specials? What's their prices? And then put it in like an Excel spreadsheet. Before, you'd have to go send 5 employees out to go find all that out, maybe, right? And collect all this data. So, I mean, AI is intense. I mean, you could probably do some of that you can't really do it with Chat GBT. Maybe you could do a deep research project, but I don't know if it's going to find everything like these are specifically looking for things.
Yeah, no, it seems like it's really specific to the business too. Like, because if we're talking like a small business and they have to run everything themselves, have control of what it is going on, it feels like having the power of those types of capabilities inside their POS. It feels like a customer experience and customer retention problem of, how are we going to make our employees as efficient and effective as possible off of their POS to be able to really work with the customers to give information in a good way. It kind of I never thought of it that way with a POS system. Like I know even just like an old school system, you think this we just collect payments through this thing. We're
Right.
just using this to run our business. I didn't really think of it as the perspective of how can this thing actually track and leverage our data with AI to be able to give a better experience. Would you say that one of the main considerations is that customer retention and face-to-face customer experience as well?
There's definitely it was brought up at the convention in a couple of sessions like, okay, now if you're collecting a bunch of data on your customer, how can customers opt out of this AI data? So like, you, Jacob, you come into my restaurant and I know like what you ordered the last 3 times you were there. Like that, is that too intrusive? Or
What have you been
maybe
seeing in the industry though? Like, does it feel like people actually have that sentiment, or does it feel like the efficiency of it makes enough sense?
no, I think some people think it's super creepy. Like, for instance, like I buy something from somebody and they use Stripe, right? And then all of a sudden I go to another website that uses Stripe and they have my card information. That's a little creepy. Square does that. Toast does that. Do I, and what people don't understand is those companies are the merchant. You are not the merchant when you use these type of companies because they operate as a PayFac and they are the merchant of record. You're just using their rails. So they're the owner of all the data. Like doctors' offices and medical companies should not be using those companies because unless you sign separate agreements with them, they can share that data and that's not HIPAA compliant. But, for restaurants, I don't know, someone could create, you could say Toast has some kind of ecosystem. So, you do order food online from a restaurant and they already know who you are by your phone number or your email address and can send you a code and they already have your credit card saved and you can be ordering from 5 different restaurants.
Yeah, I mean, I see how that could be a problem. That makes sense. Like, it definitely would be a little creepy if you're going
No, so
site
I'm
to
just
site.
saying that's becoming more of a, you know, I mean, is the government going to step in and say, "Oh, you're not supposed to be sharing this data"? It hasn't happened yet, but obviously with AI, it's making it a lot easier for companies to share data, and take data and take it apart. I mean, you could take, for example, I'm doing a new lease at my office. So they gave me 2 or 3 different copies of it already. I said, "Oh, change this, change that, blah, 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 blah." And, then I took the last one, went to the ChatGPT chat, uploaded it, said, "Okay, did they make all the changes that were requested? Did they remove this, and this that was supposed to be removed?" And it said, "Yeah." And I don't have to read 25 pages. I mean, what ChatGPT can do is I mean, that probably saved me an hour of reading.
Yeah, that's what we just talked about on the last one was optimization really of your time and being able to capitalize on not having to sit there and read a bunch of pages. I think that topic overall is always really interesting to me of just optimization. I know it looked like on one of the podcasts you did recently, I think it was like the Financial Innovations podcast. You guys were talking a little bit about the optimization of payment systems for small businesses, for example, whether it's processing fees, improving cash flow, making it more efficient. Like, what would you say are some of the most important optimizations small businesses can start taking a look at? Because, like, my dad, he actually manages a music store, like a local store. So I know it's very small business local. So I'd be curious, like, what are some of the optimizations of these payment
Well,
systems that
take
you think are most
a lot of
important?
things that businesses need to look at is technology today versus technology 10 years ago, technology 20 years ago. You're probably too young for that. It's changed a lot, right? So when you look at, okay, I'm going to spend this money on technology, you need to also use the technology. So if you have a system and it's tracking your inventory, you're able to go into those systems and go, "Oh, what are the most popular items we sold last month?" Or what was the most, like you said, music store, what are the most popular items? What are the most popular items at music stores in the state that I'm in? And things like that. And then you're able to, buy the right inventory for the crowd that's coming into your store. You can find out a lot. You can also find out about, okay, during our operating hours, when are we making the most sales? Do you have too many employees? It teaches you how to schedule. I mean, even in our restaurant software, it teaches people after they're using it for about a month, it's going to show them like, trends like, okay, this is the times of the day when you have the most people in your restaurant. And then you're able to schedule around that. You can even ask it to make the schedule and it's going to make you a schedule based on what you need. So it's super important to, not just not buy technology, but learn how to use the technology in its simplest way. And with AI, it makes it so much easier because you can just ask the system. You don't have to go in there and go, "Run this report, run that report." You can set it up to run all these reports for you. So you get these reports on a daily or weekly basis. And this report is in your hand, and you go, "Oh, I know what." this is. I know what that is. I know what's going on. I know how many voids were made, how many comps there were. I know, and inventory wise, what is in my store, what I sold, and things like that. So it's super important to put technology to work. And then the podcast you were talking about was we were talking about B2B. I had Roger McNamara, vice president of B2B sales for Visa, which is not easy to get somebody from Visa to come on your podcast. And we're talking about B2B companies because there's a lot of these companies don't realize like they're giving people terms 30 days, 60 days, 90 days to pay their bill. They should put credit card to work for them and accept the credit card, pay the fee. You can even add a small surcharge to lower your cost of acceptance and not be the bank for your customers. I've seen companies go out of business because they'll be carrying like accounts receivable of 20, 40, 50, 100 grand. And after a while, that can start to cripple your business if you're carrying that much debt month over month over month, because when you're not getting paid, there's no profit. When you finally get that money, you're losing 2 to 4 basis points of that money every day that you don't have it, because you don't have it to pay your employees. You don't have it to pay your suppliers. That there's no profit when you're owed money. So B2B companies need to do rethink like, okay, yeah, credit cards does cost money to accept a credit card, but improving your cash flow can do a lot more for your business.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like, even from a high level of what you just said, that's something that I think any business can understand, whether that's them considering their own operations or how they're buying or selling to other people, is everybody knows that cash flow is gonna be what keeps you alive. Where I know it just in my very narrow experience, I helped run a small general contracting company, and cash flow by far was the thing that bit us in the ass every single time, was not being able to do the things we know we needed to do. So that's a
Right.
really good point.
And it's also, making sure you have what you need to accept payment. So, do you have the right kind of equipment? So, like we just upgraded somebody's point of sale in their store, and now they can take Apple Pay, Google Pay. They didn't even have EBT before. And, we showed them like, oh, here's a way where we have a way where you can apply for EBT, online through our company. You send in all the information and we send it off to the government for you. And somebody advocates to, get the licensing for you. So it's super important to have the ways to pay. And even on your website, to use a gateway that detects, like our gateway detects, oh, this guy's on a Chrome browser. Does he have Google Pay? They're on an iPhone. Do they have Apple Pay? And the buttons are there so they can make a quick transaction.
I really love that you brought that up because so my experience right now is coming in as I'm in tech sales, like B2B tech sales. And one of the things that we talk about so much is meeting customers where they're at and then really trying to tailor a solution to make sure it's a good fit. And I love that you're bringing it from a perspective, from a more technical perspective. Like, it's not meet someone where they're at of a desired outcome directly per se. It's no, this customer literally and physically needs to use Apple Pay, and you need a physical software that can meet that customer where they're at. And I think when you talked about like the B2B relationship when it came to just payments overall and everything, the idea of let's get businesses optimizing the technology to the best capability that they can. I think that's just going to elevate that concept of meeting customers where they're at as the customer payment needs evolve, or even the customer experience needs, like the FAQs you mentioned before. As that evolves, it feels like the more we can educate business owners or educate the people that are purchasing a software like this one on how to use it and how to optimize it, that's gonna be what's making all the difference. Is you can sell them a thing with a million different features, but if they don't know how to use it, or if they don't understand the use cases, or if they can't meet the customers where they're at and they're overbearing with what it is they're providing, it feels like it all might just collapse. Like, where do you think, if we could narrow down like some of those main things? It sounds like you love being an educator in the space and making sure, I'm sure when you talk with your clients and making sure they understand the benefits as well. What would you say are some of the really narrow pieces that someone should understand so that they can best optimize the way that they're using this type of technology?
Like hospitality space, don't look at that tablet costs you X amount of dollars a month to put in your server's hand. Think about how much less time that server has to spend at the table. You might get an extra turn in your restaurant because they can place an order from the tablet. They can come back to the table and the customer can pay on the tablet. The customer is going to leave a bigger tip. We see this constantly. Tips are larger when they're doing pay at the table rather than the person writing it on a piece of paper. Okay. Plus, you don't get chargebacks because we're authorizing the full amount. So if someone has $100 worth of drinks, they want to leave $100 tip. The charge is authorized for $200, not 100 plus the 20% allowed by the credit card companies, and then $80 gets charged back. That's something those type of businesses need to look at. you know, Tipping at the register. Does your software allow for, in service type businesses where somebody's maybe in a cigar store and they want to leave a tip because the employee rolled cigars for them or gift wrap something, having the ability to do things like that, in B2B world, making it easy for people to pay bills. I mean, and during the pandemic, we saw this definitely accelerate in the business to consumer world where businesses were sending you emails. You clicked the link, you paid your invoice. You clicked the link, you paid your power bill, this bill, that bill. B2B companies, we teach them how to do the same thing. Send out your invoice, send them to a web page, have them fill in the data, the invoice number, the amount, their credit card or their bank account. And then you set up a webhook that's going back into your CRM or your accounting software, or you're sending them a direct link to an invoice. There's a lot of ways to take payments. Now we have all this like no code technology. So with no code, you can create a shopping cart for one item or multiple items. You don't even need to have shopping cart software now. With some of the technology that we offer at my company, it's basically all no code. You just like make it in the portal, boom, boom, take the link and post it on your website, post it on your social media. Social selling is a big thing. There's just so much you can do with technology that's super, super simple, right? With all this no code tech that's out there now. So people need to put like the technology to work. Don't think about it costs this much money. No, it's not costing you. Look at what you can do and save time, you know, with technology. Like getting like our restaurant point of sale for restaurants and bars. At the end of the night, you tell us what you want in your report, and then we make the report. When they close the batch in the place, boom, a report gets emailed out. You don't have to go log in anywhere to find it. You wake up in the morning, it's in your inbox. It goes to whoever you want it. You need it to go to 2 people or you need it to go to 10 people. That's what we do. And then you can see everything that you need to see.
Yeah. No, I can bet that would be so helpful, like, in any use case. It's really I agree with you. It can't be how much is the tablet. We have to be having conversations around business use cases and what the long-term effects of those are gonna be, and it sounds like those are some really good examples. So I'm glad you said that. I wanna segue just a little bit. I'm out of complete curiosity because I know I heard this come up a little bit in my time of reading and things like that. Have you came across the conversation of like cryptocurrency in payments, whether that's physical POS, online POS, maybe where you think that's going, how it's even possible to do? Have you ran into that and started having conversations about it?
Yeah, we were offering cryptocurrency pre Joe Biden, but he changed some laws about crypto and spending and taxes that kind of stop people from using it in a transactional manner in the US. So that has not been changed by the IRS and Congress yet. So when they do, maybe that'll come back. But crypto was easy to do with invoicing, but we ran into problems with it. So let's say I sent you an invoice for $20,000 or $10,000. And then maybe you don't have 20 grand in one wallet. Maybe you have 5 grand in four different wallets, right? Because a lot of people do that, like the real crypto, whatever you want to call them, connoisseurs or the real crypto people, right? They're going to have hot wallet. So hot wallet is like connected to Coinbase, and they're going to have a cold wallet, which they're going to have on a USB, right? And a lot of people have multiple USBs and they have multiple wallets. So when you send somebody an invoice, they can do a partial payment. And so a lot of times it's not really set up like, you're at the point of sale, someone's paying you 200 bucks. It's going to take their money. But then if they don't have 200 bucks worth of Bitcoin or Doge or whatever, and it's going to say, oh, it only converted out 150. And then if the employee is not paying attention, it's kind of the that's kind of the rub with crypto that those kind of things can happen. So like that needs to be figured out and improved upon. Like we were using it a lot in the B2B world. We had even nightclubs like, okay, someone wants to throw a party at a nightclub. They want to pay 50 grand of Bitcoin. We had clubs that would send out an invoice for 50 grand. They get converted to fiat. They get 50 grand in their bank account. Jacob shows up with all his friends, parties for 50 grand. Obviously, if you spend more, then you got to pay them with a credit card because they wanted to do those in advance. We had people renting yachts. We had somebody buy $1 million condo, all with Bitcoin. Took about 15 invoices because of all the wallet stuff.
That makes sense because it being B2B with some more maybe extravagant cases, or instead of, really transactional volume, more large dollar amount volume instead. Did it feel like, why was that more efficient? Like, that's kinda what I'm curious about. What in that type of situation, why did the companies choose to do that? Was it because of the ease of transfer of money? Was it because of the, like, really, what was it? What do you think Why do you think people are choosing that as things continue to evolve?
I think like you see it in Europe, a lot of cross border purchases. Like we had jewelry places and they're selling jewelry to someone in Brazil, someone in Israel, someone in Canada. Okay, they don't have to do a cross border transaction. They don't have to send a wire using, Swift and costs a bunch of money and a currency conversion. Boom, they send them a link, they pay with crypto, and then crypto is converted to fiat. All the fees are included in the transaction, and they get their 50 grand in their bank account. And we saw that going on a lot with jewelry businesses, people selling cars, I mean, expensive cars like Ferraris. And, some of these people had a lot of, they had crypto millions, where they bought Bitcoin at 2 3 thousand and it went up to 25 grand. They're like, okay, well, I'll just take 4 Bitcoins and buy a Ferrari, kind of thing. And they looked at it like play money,
Yeah.
more or less like, okay, I have this money, and they're just cashing, they were cashing it out. And the whales drive crypto, right? Because you look at it, it's just like a stock, right? If you go and you see some stock, you go, okay, this stock is at 10 bucks. And if I take like 5 grand and put it in there and then it goes up to 20, I made all this money. Okay. So you made a little money, right? But the person who went and put 500 grand in or dropped 1 million in there, they doubled their money, right? They made a lot more money. Like, you took your 5 grand and turned it into 10. They took 1 million and turned it into 2 million, right? And that's why you see the crypto price go vroom. And as
Yeah.
it's going up, all the stupid people are over there going, oh, I got to buy more crypto. And they're putting 5, 10, 20 bucks in, right? And the price goes up. And then you see it hits a certain ceiling. And then all those whales go, okay, made a bunch of money, start selling. But they don't really sell it. They just take the money and put it in USD. Right, they just convert it
Yeah.
to USDT, dollar for dollar, right? And then they just wait for it to go down incrementally. When it goes down incrementally, they go back in, and then, just think, 1 million, and whatever, it goes up, 20 grand. They're making hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the whales basically control all that. And there's whales, whatever, in the US and all over Europe, Asia. I mean, it's a worldwide currency.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it definitely seems like it, and it seems crazy that in a world where you would have never thought that would be a thing, like, just the whole idea of cryptocurrency, and without going down that whole rabbit hole, because obviously there's so much we could talk
Well, I mean,
about there.
you can compare it to the stock market, right? It's
Yeah, pretty much.
almost the same. It's the same kind
Yeah.
of thing, except
Where
it's
you're able to directly trade with your shares to be a more efficient payment system, like, across, international borders or something as well. So
it just
it's
makes it
interesting.
easy. It makes it easier. Like in Europe, you want to send money from Germany to France. It's not that easy. You don't just go, okay, I'm sending some money to France. It's the euro, but still you're crossing a country. They have to go through the SWIFT system, blah blah blah. It's a lot. They do a ton of B2B in Europe of using Bitcoin and stable coins over there all the time.
Yeah, and that's where I actually that's where I heard it first in the industry with like payments when I was doing research a couple years ago was really just the efficiency of exactly what you're talking about. So that makes sense. I think one of the things I heard you talking about working with some clients where it's things like yachts, things like jewelry, things like fancy cars. I think I'd seen you post something about it, so I'm curious about your perspective just really quick on this. What do you think needs to be a focus when it comes to like higher value B2B sales when it comes to how we really build rapport with people, building relationships, like dressing appropriately, all those different things. Because, like I said, I'm in sales. I try to take these things into consideration. I'm curious what some of your opinions are on this stuff.
I mean, it's kind of crazy when you talk about dressing appropriate. I did write an article about, is the suit and tie dead? Do you need a suit and tie to make a sale? I mean, I've gotten on like Zoom calls and I'm on there and and I remember wearing one time I was wearing a dress shirt and I got on this meeting and I was talking to three guys with t-shirts. They were covered in tattoos. We had a banker on the call and the guy's wearing a shirt and a tie. And after the call, like these guys said to me, they go, "Man, that was like talking to like my dad and my grandpa." And I was like, that's just when you're not going to meet somebody in person, you don't know what to expect. I went to see a business owner one time that owns a whole chain of restaurants. I went down there to meet him and I'm sweating with a dress shirt and a tie on. And the guy looks at me after he makes me walk around for 30 minutes in the sweltering hot heat of Miami Beach. He says, "Why don't you lose the tie, sit over there, drink a bottle of water." And he goes, "Then I'm going to give you 5 minutes to tell me why I should do business with you." And the guy's sitting there wearing a pair of shorts, flip flops, and basically like a golf shirt. And it wasn't even a golf shirt with a collar, like Lululemon $100 workout shirt, right? So I'm like, you have to really be, I mean, I'm 65, okay? So I want to be relatable. So like this look, I got on my cool hat, I got on a relaxed shirt. I'm not going to be, someone's not going to look, people don't even believe that's my age. And, but I'm going to be relatable looking like this versus if I'm sitting here with a tie, you know, and we're having a conversation,
Yeah.
you're gonna feel like you're talking to your dad. And I don't want that to happen. And, business owners, I'm getting older and business owners are getting younger. So, and it doesn't matter what business you're in, you need to be relatable to the people that you're talking to. And you need to be, I learned when I was a chef, I used to be a chef. So I remember I got my first executive chef job. I'm in charge of a hotel. And every week we had to have the meeting. And I was like, yeah, everything's great. Finally, after like 3 meetings, my boss says, "Listen, you can't just say everything's great. You got to tell people, what are you doing? What's going on in your department?" They sent me to Dale Carnegie. One of the most important things I learned at Dale Carnegie is you are the expert. And you just have to remember that, like when people are talking to you and they come to you, or you're selling them, or you're trying to establish a relationship with them, you're the expert on your subject matter. You're the subject matter expert, and you need to act like that. You need to tell people, like, "I'm the expert. I'm doing this 25 years. I'm going to tell you exactly, you're getting chargebacks. I'm going to tell you why you're getting chargebacks and how to protect yourself from that to keep happening." So,
Yeah, so it's more about what you're genuinely bringing to the table and bringing to the relationship and the expertise you can have and the actual conversations and the actual value. It's not about what you wear or fitting into some sales box or communication box that you feel like you have to be in. It's more, I feel like what you're saying is it's more about just be relatable, be pertinent to the conversation and have good relationships. And those will go a lot longer than a lasting first, physical impression of what you're wearing or something like that.
yeah, I mean, I used to have a friend of mine, he passed away recently. We used to call him the three-piece suit guy. I would see him out selling. The guy he'd wear a three-piece suit, whether it was 60 degrees out or 100. This guy had on his three-piece suit, tie, sweating bullets, and, that was how that worked. I would tell you that worked in 2000. That worked in 2010, but that doesn't work anymore. People don't care how you dress. They don't really care. I mean, I think people want you to look professional, but you go look at Mark Cuban and how her Hermosi or Gary
Yeah.
Vee. These guys are walking around with a Lululemon shirt on and sweatpants and a pair of Nikes, you know, and that's what and they pull it off. So can everybody pull it off? Yeah, you can pull it. You can pull it off if you're the. I heard Robert Herjkovich say the most dangerous guy in the room. You have bunch of people in there with suits and ties and shirts and ties and all that, and then you see Mark Cuban sitting in the back in a t-shirt and a pair of sweatpants and a pair of sneakers. He's the most dangerous guy in the room. He can dress like that because he is who he is. But, you just have to
Like,
be.
I'll be Bart Cuban yet.
No, but you have to be relatable. Sometimes I'm talking to business owners. I don't know if you heard my podcast about chargebacks. I'm talking to the guy Mark Wagner from Disputifier about chargeback. He's probably in his 20s, but we can have this conversation because he understands chargebacks. I'm telling him, what we see our clients going through, and he's explaining from he's a chargeback vendor, and he's explaining like how that's all working, on the back end for merchants. So it's all about having conversations and being relatable and people seeing that what you're talking about. It doesn't matter what you're selling. You could be selling a widget, you could be selling anything. It doesn't matter. Just be relatable to the customer.
No, I love that. And I think to round this out, it's been like such a good conversation. I like to end the ones I do with one of two things. And I think I'll switch it a little bit for you. I usually ask like what's a sentence or two or a mantra that you're trying to live by right now, either in business or personal. And I'd love if you want to answer that one, but also to you, it sounds like you love having conversations with a lot of different people. And I'd also say, what is maybe a sentence or two or a mantra that you'd prescribe to someone younger, whether it's in this industry or just a life lesson? What's some of those things that come to mind?
One of my sayings that I always like is no guts, no glory. So to be in business, you got to have guts because otherwise you're not going to get the glory. And it's not always going to be pretty, but you got to have, you got to really, you have to dig in. And so you have to have guts to start a business. So many people tell me, you're a chef. How can you start a payments company? You don't know anything about payments. You're only in it for like a year or two. I didn't listen to any of them. I just went ahead and I just said, no, I'm going to do this. And I had an idea and I did it. And, I have lots of other saying figures don't lie, but liars sure can figure. That's another one.
That's a good one.
My brother uses it. He's an accountant. He goes, I like that. You know,
Yeah. No, I like that. Have guts to get glory. That is for sure. I mean, that's in anything. I experienced that when I was training to fight. I experienced that when I was getting into my first business and my first sales job. And I'm like you said, I am young. That's very true. So that type of lesson is something I think you should have to learn early and you can't ever let it go.
yeah. And another thing is, when doesn't matter what business you're running, if you're starting a business, running a business, or you work in a business, there's one thing especially young people don't get. You are in sales. And I'm going to relate this back to when I was a chef. We had somebody come into the hotel, they're doing an event, and my boss goes, oh, you got to go into the sales office and you got to sell these people on what a great chef you are and what you're going to do it for their event for food. And I was like, I'm not the sales guy. That's the sales office. Let the sales lady do it. Nope. You got to get in there and do it. And so it doesn't matter what you do. If you're going to start a business, you're in sales. I've been to like incubators before and I go, okay, everybody here is going to start a business. Raise your hand. Everybody raises their hand. Okay. Who's a salesperson? Nobody raises their hand. What do you mean? How are you going to make sales? You can't just say, oh, I'm going to put up a website. They will come. No, you're a salesperson. You have to learn how to do that. You got to step out. You have to learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Okay. And that's like another saying of mine. You have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable because you have to step out of your comfort zone if you want to be successful. There's no other way to do it. I've had employees when I tell them, like, you want to make more money working for me? Well, you're going to need to do more and you're going to have to step outside of your comfort zone to do that. That's what you're going to have to do. Sales is a great, I mean, is a great career. Okay. And there's no earning cap in most cases. Okay. Especially if you're 1099. But you got to get comfortable doing it because you're going to hear a lot of no's before you get a yes. I used to tell people you get paid a lot of money to hear a lot of no's. And then when you make that yes, it's like,
That's right, that's right, and that's what I experience every day. When we get off this call, that's what I'm gonna go do. I'll get told no a couple different times until I get a good yes.
yeah, you
But
might
no,
hear
that's
100
good.
no's for one yes, right?
That's right, exactly. So you just have to double down and get good at what you can good at, get good at what you can get good at, get some guts, keep working hard, and do what you can. So those sayings are so good, and this conversation's been so insightful. Thank you so much for making the time. I mean, me personally, I know I learned a lot about the payments industry that I didn't know. Was glad to like be able to pick your brain, but even just from a philosophy and of business sense and life sense of what it takes to work hard and really just dig into being the best that you can be, presenting yourself well, having guts. This is an amazing conversation. Thank you for your time today, Alan.
Oh, thank you, Jacob. Yeah, watch out for you can look me up. I'm on LinkedIn. You can follow my podcast, B2B Vault. You can check out my website, nationwidepaymentsystems.com. Getting ready to launch our new all-in-one payment platform, which is called NPSONE1, which is basically a platform where you're going to be able to do everything you can do on Stripe and more with our platform. It's We've had people using it for like the last year, and now it's going to full rollout. So it's going to be really cool. I'm excited about it to launch this new project.
That's awesome. I know I'll keep an eye out on all your stuff. I know you keep doing all the different content pieces and sharing industry insights and stuff like that. So we'll stay on top of it. But thanks again for your time. Glad we could connect today.
Thanks, Jacob, for having me on.
Yep.
Peace out.
Of course. Peace out. Have a good one.